called A State of Mind, and they had like a little label called Mind Matter, and they mostly put out like pretty obscure, well, not obscure, but like for the masses, it was obscure. Within the punk scene, they were known. It was very political stuff that they were putting out. And at the time, I was seeing someone who started a band called Christ on Parade, and they were a hardcore punk band, very political as well. And they started getting popular, and they did their first record with Pushead, who had his own record label. He's a well-known artist who has worked a lot with Metallica and a lot with Thrasher, sort of known for these like skull images. And he's very successful. And he had a label called Pussmort. He did them. He did Corrosion of Conformity. Did an album with him. I can't remember who else he had. He had a lot. Probably his own stuff. Septic Death. He had his own band. And so they did a first record with an EP with him, and then his relationship, other than with me, I knew him from Rough Trade when I worked at Rough Trade. He was good friends with the singer of Christ on Parade, but then the band like kicked the singer out, and the new band had like new material. Other guys were doing the singing, including my boyfriend at the time, and so I said, why don't you do a record with Mind Matter? And so that's how I got involved with Mind Matter. And we did a record with them, and because I worked at Rough Trade Records in San Francisco.
Retail store.
Yeah, well, it was a retail store in the front. It was on 6th and Mission. It was a retail store in the front, and it was a warehouse, like a distributor and a one-stop wholesaler in the back.
For the UK label, Rough Trade.
But also for like all factory record stuff,
okay.
All mute stuff, so Depeche Mode, New Order, Joy Division, and all the punk stuff, including this, and also including the Smiths, who were friggin' huge. New Order, until Tone Looks Wild Thing came out, New Order was Blue Monday was the biggest selling independent single ever, and then Tone Looks Wild Thing became like the biggest one. So we sold a load of those records. So because I worked at Rough Trade, I had a relationship with a distributor in Europe called Southern Studios. They were studio, also a distributor. They did all of Crass's stuff. And because I had a relationship with the owner, John Loder, rest in peace, he agreed to take Christ on Parade's record to Europe. So he distributed it in Europe, Rough Trade distributed it in the United States, and it did really well. It was great. It was a great experience. Then I took a year off, and I left Rough Trade, and I wasn't involved with Mind Matter, and I took a year off and did some things. And then I came back to the Punk Squat, and I was like, I need a job. And someone said, I think there's like a music place like just across the street, basically just across San Pablo. I was like living on 36 between Adeline and San Pablo, and it was like I just crossed the street past the Lock and Key place, and there was this big brick building, and I went and knocked on the door and met Jason Blaine. And I had to go back like 3 times before he gave me a job, because he'd never hired a white woman to work in the warehouse before, and I wasn't applying for an office job. And he hired me to set up their CD department. CDs had just started coming out, and so that was my first job. And then I went from there to head of sales, and then I was head of A&R for In a Minute Records.
So you saw like Orbia, all the different, Totally Insane, all the different groups, Dre Dog come true on...
Yeah, I mean, it kind of was born out of we did a lot of consignment, so there were a lot of local indie artists, and we were a one-stop, a wholesaler to all the mom and pops in the Bay Area and beyond, and all these artists were making like their little tapes. And they would come in, and I would listen to them, and I would bring them in on consignment. And so a lot of the artists that ended up signing to In a Minute first came in on consignment.